In the deep mountains of Appalachia, night was a different world. The old folks used to say that the mountains at night and the mountains during the day were two completely different places. When the sun dropped behind the ridges, the woods went dead silent. Not peaceful silent, empty silent. The kind of silence where you could feel something else listening. In those days, there were no streetlights, no porch lights that stayed on all night. When sunset came, families shut their doors, locked their windows, and pulled the curtains tight. No one went out wandering after dark. It was just the rule. A rule everyone followed without question. My name is Tommy. I grew up in a small cabin at the very end of a holler, the last house before the deep woods began. The deepest, darkest part of the mountains was right behind our backyard. And in our house, we had one rule that was absolute. At sundown, lock the door, close every window, and light the old oil lamp on the kitchen table. Even if you left the smallest crack open, you were inviting something in that you couldn't explain. Something you didn't want to meet. When I was 8 years old, in the middle of a freezing winter, I learned why that rule existed. It is a night I will remember for the rest of my life. That night, I was in a deep sleep, the kind of heavy, warm sleep only a kid can have in winter, buried under quilts. I was woken up by a sound, faint scratching sound. It was soft at first, a light, scraping noise coming from the window. It dragged across the old wooden frame outside, right over the thin paper we used to insulate the glass. It didn't sound like a raccoon or a dog scratching to get in. It wasn't the wind blowing a branch. It was slow, deliberate. It had a rhythm to it, like long fingernails carefully dragging down wood. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I started to sit up, to look. In an instant, my grandfather, who was sleeping beside me, jolted awake. His rough, calloused hand shot out and clamped over my mouth. His grip was so tight I could barely breathe. His whole body was tense, rigid as a board. He held his breath, making himself as small and as silent as possible. He leaned down, his lips barely brushing my ear, and breathed more than whispered. That was the only time he ever spoke that night. The rest was silence and terror. My blood ran cold. My pajamas were instantly soaked with sweat, but I was frozen stiff. I couldn't move. Through the pale moonlight coming through the trees, I looked toward the window. The scratching had stopped. In its place came something worse. Heavy, slow, dragging footsteps. They were coming through the frozen yard. Each step sank into the dead leaves and the hard, frosty ground. Slowly, methodically, coming closer and closer to our porch. Through the faint glow of the oil lamp on the table, I could see its shape in the yard. It was a figure, a man-like shadow, but wrong. It was unnaturally tall, at least a full head taller than any normal man. Its limbs were too long, too thin. It stood completely still in the middle of our yard, not moving, not making a sound. It just stood there in the darkness, radiating a heavy, suffocating pressure that I could feel even from inside the cabin. On the table, Grandfather had lit 3 small sticks of pine incense before bed. It was another old mountain tradition to keep the house calm at night. Now only half of them were left, glowing faintly. A thin wisp of smoke curled upward, but it did nothing to push back the cold that was seeping into the room. Grandfather had told me this story 100 times. In these deep mountain hollers, the woods are full of things. Old things, lonely things, and they know which houses are careless. A house with a door left unlocked, a window left cracked, a light left burning in the wrong way, is the easiest one to find. For weeks, strange things had been happening in our holler. First, it was just livestock. Chickens and a few goats left to graze near the tree line that vanished without a trace. No blood, no tracks. Then Old Man Henderson, who lived 2 cabins down, decided to sit on his porch after dark to get some cool air. He didn't latch his front gate properly. The next morning, his neighbors went to check on him. The cabin was empty. He was gone. The only thing left was on his door frame. Long, thin, deep scratch marks, far longer than any human hand could make. From that day on, everyone knew there was something tall walking the holler at night. It was looking for houses that were not sealed tight, and our cabin was the closest one to the mountain. the most vulnerable. Every single evening, my grandfather would walk around the cabin twice. He would check every lock, every shutter, every latch. He would light the lamp. He never, ever got careless. Except for that one night. Right before bed, I had to use the outhouse. I was in a hurry, and I didn't pull the back door shut all the way. A gust of winter wind caught it and blew it open, just a narrow crack. An inch or two, nothing more. By the time we noticed, the sky was already pitch black. The mountains had swallowed the sun completely. The night had already taken over the holler. We were too scared to get up and close it. And now those heavy footsteps had stopped right outside our back door. The old wooden gate that led into our small yard creaked softly, as if something had just brushed past it. I was curled into a ball, clutching grandfather's shirt so hard my knuckles were white, shaking uncontrollably. In the dim light of the lamp, grandfather's face was ashen, pale as paper. In his other hand, he was gripping the only thing we had that could be used as a weapon, an old pair of rusted iron shears from his workshop. The tall shadow circled our cabin slowly, completely silent except for those heavy, dragging steps. And then it stopped, right in front of the back door, the door that was cracked open. Then a gentle pressure. The door, which had been barely open, was pushed by an outside force. Slowly, slowly, it began to open wider. Faint, rhythmic knocking followed. Not loud, not frantic. 3 soft knocks. Pause. 3 soft knocks again. Calm, patient, as if it knew someone was inside, and it was politely waiting to be let in. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure the thing outside could hear it. I remembered what the old-timers in the holler said. If the night visitor knocks, you never, ever open the door. But even if you don't open it, it will wait. It will stand outside your door all night, watching. Just then, the flame of the oil lamp flickered violently. The light sputtered, as if a cold draft had blown through the sealed cabin, and the room's temperature plummeted. The air turned to ice. The knocking stopped. For a second, I thought it had left. I almost let out a breath. Then came a new sound. A sharp, splintering, tearing sound. Long, thin, yellowed nails were reaching into the crack of the door. It was clawing at the wood, trying to pry the door open wider. Tiny wood shavings fell to the floor. The small crack was getting bigger and bigger. Cold moonlight poured into the cabin through the widening gap. Through that gap, I could finally see it clearly. It was hunched over, its back bent at a strange angle, its face pressed close to the opening, trying to peer inside. It smelled of damp earth and rot and wet leaves left for too long. A foul, sickening stench drifted in. Grandfather was panicking. He grabbed a handful of ash from the fireplace and threw it directly at the crack in the door, shouting a prayer his own father had taught him to drive things away. At that exact moment, from outside the door came a low, guttural growl. It was not a human voice. It was not an animal voice. It was deep, wet, and filled with anger. A sound that made my ears ring and my stomach turn. Then the footsteps changed. They became chaotic, frantic. They scrambled backward, retreating quickly from the porch. Faster and faster, until they disappeared into the deep woods behind our house, swallowed by the absolute darkness of the mountain. We did not move. We did not breathe. We sat there, frozen, stiff as corpses, until the first light of dawn touched the horizon. We stayed like that for hours, until we heard the distant crow of a rooster from the next holler over, signaling that morning had finally come. Only when the sun was fully up did grandfather's legs stop shaking long enough for him to walk to the door. In the morning light, the damage was clear. The wooden back door was covered in fresh scratch marks. Deep, long, overlapping gouges, densely packed together. And on the frozen mud outside the threshold, there were a few scattered clumps of coarse, black hair, and a single huge, bare footprint that was far too long and too narrow to be human. On the table, the oil lamp had burned completely dry. Not a drop of oil was left. Later that morning, grandfather walked alone to the entrance of the trail that led into the deep woods. He took some branches from a dogwood tree and built a small, simple cross, blocking the path that led closest to our house. From that day forward, the people in our holler became even more strict. Every sunset, every house locked its doors and windows tight, and the soft glow of oil lamps burned in every window, like small, defiant stars against the darkness. Decades have passed. I long ago moved out of those mountains and into the city. But even now, every time the sky begins to darken, I find myself walking through my own house, checking every lock, every window, making sure everything is shut tight, because I can still hear it, the scratching, the knocking, and the feeling of something tall and patient, standing just outside the door, waiting in the dark. I finally understood. The darkness in the deep woods never changes. It has always been there. What changes is that we finally learn to close the door before it gets dark. Subscribe for more.